Hello everyone who has decided to join me today, and thank you for tuning in. You could be doing something completely different, possibly more exciting at the moment, but you are not. Instead, you have made the conscious decision to listen to me fill your brain with knowledge. So again, thank you for joining me. Let's begin. Today we are going to discuss something rather dark. Witches. That's right. Those nasty looking hags with the big pointed noses with a wart on the tip, black dresses, pointed black hats, and that use a broom as a primary form of transportation. These are typically the things that we generally associate with the witches that Hollywood and video games portray for us. Now, keep in mind that witches are fictional. Anyone can tell you that the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, or even Gruntilda, Blabelda, and Minghella from the Banjo-Kazooie video game series are fictional. These beings resemble humans. However, they possess these powers and generally use them for mischief. Oh yeah, and they're fictional. They do not exist. Now I continue to fixate on the fact that witches do not exist because today was very much just common sense. However, that wasn't always the case. If we look back on America's history, we'll see that there was a point in time where there was mass hysteria over who was and who was not a witch, but not like the ones that I mentioned earlier. These were just ordinary people who, due to pre-adolescent ignorance and stupidity, had to pay with their lives to accommodate for the damage that these preteens were doing. First of all, witches in today's culture usually come about in films or as characters to dress as for Halloween and are generally associated with evil and horror. A prime example is 1977's film Suspiria, a film that takes the unsettling nature of witches to a brand new level and sets a new standard for the horror to be evoked by them. Another example is 1999's The Blair Witch Project, a film that would ultimately ruin camping trips for the upcoming generation because of its new found footage style in which the film was presented in, leaving viewers with images of late teens disappearing in the woods because of the urban legend The Witch that was said to terrorize the forest. The purpose of these few examples is really just to show you the evolution that the idea of the witch has gone through over the past few decades and even through the centuries. But how did it all begin? The year 1691 was coming to a close when all of a sudden young Betty Paris, age 9, and Abigail Williams, age 11, began acting in a very unusual manner. Later, Reverend Samuel Paris, a concerned father and uncle to both girls, took them to specialist William Griggs to get to the bottom of things, which he later suspected as the work of the devil. Overwhelmed with the attention they were receiving, the girls accused 3 locals, Sarah Osborne, Sarah Good, and Tituba, as being responsible for their strange behavior. As a result, all 3 women were arrested soon after, and unfortunately, it gets even worse from there as the tension began escalating. Soon enough, groups of teenage girls began making all of these accusations toward their fellow villagers, making all of these claims that they were victims and being possessed by the other villagers. And much like with the others who were accused of such treachery, the villagers continued being arrested, trialed, and ultimately executed. Now here are some numbers to give you an idea of how things went down. In a section of the Gale Encyclopedia of American Law, it is stated that nearly 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft in Salem during the summer of 1692. 20 accused witches were executed, 15 women and 5 men. 19 of them were hanged following conviction, and 1 was pressed to death for refusing to enter a plea. 4 prisoners, 3 women and a man died in jail. In an article by Douglas O. Linder, he states that as many as 13 others may have died in prison. And in an article by Rebecca Beatrice Brooks, she states that animals were also accused of witchcraft themselves and executed. The list of accused witches during the Salem witch trials includes not only women, men, and children, but also 2 dogs. Think about it. 200 people were accused of being witches. The strange thing about those accused was that they weren't just random people. The Gale Encyclopedia of American Law states that historians have identified a pattern of accusations that strongly suggest that the afflicted girls singled out social deviants, outcasts, outsiders, merchants, tradesmen, and others who threatened the traditional Puritan values. But the range went from children like 4-year-old girl Dorcas Good to man's best friend, which is pretty much just overdoing it a little bit. Another thing about the people that were executed is that some of them actually questioned the credibility of these girls, criticizing that they were being fake to no avail, and that only spurred them on even more. It's scary to believe really how much of an impact that these girls had on the community. I mean, these girls would pretty much just become contortionists, which was viewed as unusual behavior. But it's really, in any social situation outside of the circus, can be seen as unusual behavior. They would also accuse someone of doing that to them, and then everybody would freak out and just believe them. The power that these girls had over the community, it's just scary. And also, due to the help of a certain well-respected figure of the time, things only got worse. Cotton Mather was a bad man. He didn't believe in spectral evidence, which was proof of possession by spirits. His belief was that the witches were the human incarnation of sin, and therefore had to be eliminated from Puritan society, pushing the idea of the trials and the executions. Eventually, fortunately, things did die down, but in Witchcraft in America, he goes on stating that he worked to distance himself from the shame of the outcome of more than a year of trials and executions, even though he defended his views on witchcraft for the rest of his life, which is very apparent in his work, The Wonders of the Invisible World, when he states things like, "The Lord comfort them," in regards to the deceased, which he was all in favor for having them executed. To me, that's just very contradictory. As a matter of fact, his entire work has a very conflicting tone. When put into words, it would be like him saying, it's a shame that these people had to die. But if it's what's necessary, I guess we will continue to do so. Anyway, he made the choice to remain blind when it was made clear to him and to everybody else the error of their ways. Even Ann Putnam Jr., one of the biggest accusers of everyone who took part in, well, accusing others after the big mess, made a public apology and asked for forgiveness once she had joined the Salem Village Church. Why didn't Mather do the same? Well, he didn't think he had to. He thought he was doing the right thing. So why should he, right? It's just a little something to think about. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. It would appear that we have learned quite a bit today, but the main thing that I want you, the listener or listeners, is to walk away from this with some perspective. These people didn't know any better. I mean, surely today we look back at that time period and think to ourselves, the level of ridiculousness and ignorance is just way up there. But is it really fair to them, for us, to think that way? Like I said, it was a different time period. They thought they were doing right. Hopefully I was able to educate you enough to the point of being able to put yourself in their shoes, see the world as they saw it, gain their perspective. So until next time, thank you for listening.